Good evening, Bills Mafia and everyone in the world. Welcome to the Buffalo Blitz. I'm Lance Nelson, president of Built in Buffalo. Today I'm joined by great inspiration of mine in the content creating world, Dan Tortora. Dan, how are we doing tonight, my man?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Happy to be here. Happy. I appreciate you having me out here, and love the opportunity to get to talk with you.
Yeah, great. Before we get going too far, I just want to say the Buffalo Blitz is presented by Underdog Fantasy, the best daily fantasy app out there. Sign up now using promo code BLITZ. You'll get a deposit match up to $100. And you can get in the game. They have pick'ems and daily drafts, so really cool thing that Underdog Fantasy has going on. Dan, let's hear about you a little bit. Let people in the Bills Mafia community maybe, and hopefully we have some viewers from all across Central New York get to know you a little bit and what you're about and what you got going on because you have a ton going on. So I do appreciate your time.
Yeah. I guess the easiest way to describe it is I've been broadcasting for over 20 years. It'll be 21. I started at 18, so it'll be 21 years in November of this year. And worked at a bunch of ESPN affiliates. Worked with Fox Online and Scout at the time, and then a Yahoo affiliate. Started my own company, multimedia marketing company, named it Dan Tortora Broadcast Media over 11 years ago. It'll turn 12 in July, and we do a morning show Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time worldwide. We have exclusive partnerships, exclusive multimedia marketing partnerships with Lemoyne College, with Bryan and Stratton College of Syracuse, Binghamton University. We have covered the NFL, MLB, NBA. We have done a lot of work with the ACC, the American Athletic Conference, Notre Dame. We've been covering the NCAA tournament and have gone coast to coast, north to south for the past 2 years of setting a lot of really cool records and doing some fun things with the entire NCAA tournament. And yeah, I've covered the Jaguars for this will be going on 14 years on site, on location in some respect for the most part. So it's a lot of things. It's high school, it's college, it's professional. We've had over 5,000 guests on the show, and we call it Where Sports Meets Life on Wake Up Call because it is not your traditional sports show. I tell non-sports fans to listen. I tell sports fans to listen. And we do a lot of fun things. We do the annoying moment of the week. We have a faith-based segment called Lead, which is learn, evolve, ad lib, and deliver. We announce a top dog of the week. We do the ingredients to success. And the whole thing is meant to uplift, help you to laugh, have a good time, hopefully to think a little bit and to engage us in a positive way. We're always trying to spread positivity, get some people to laugh in their cubicles or wherever they are that day, and to hopefully shine a little bit of light and give you an angle on something that humanizes a lot of things in this world and builds relationships. So we call it the show that makes you feel like you're sitting on a couch with our guest, and that's what I want it to be.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I love the stuff, love the content, obviously. Dan and I met at a random event out in Syracuse and, been following him ever since and been able to have conversations behind the scenes and stuff here and there. And the positivity thing is the thing that kind of you gravitate towards all the time because there's so much of the opposite in this world and always appreciate your logo kind of brings it out there where it's kind of a beam of light there from the sun and stuff like that. So, really appreciate that part about you. Um, yeah, I think we can jump right into it. I know you talked a little bit of this, a little bit about this stuff on your show too. So we'll kind of rehash some of the things maybe you've been talking about the past week here. But NFL changed a few rules here, and I haven't really had a chance to say too much about it yet, and wanted to just review a couple of topics here. So first off, there's a new kickoff format, and I just want to get your thoughts. What do you think about the kickoff format? And then I can give kind of a little bit about what I think.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. We did talk about it on the show last week a couple different times. It's meant to provide more safety, and at the same time, it's meant to provide more kickoffs. I respect special teams. I know that they're the thing that gets talked about the least, but they are also the most important unit on the field. And what I mean by that is they determine where you start as an offense and they determine where your defense has to start defending from. And I don't think people really think deeply into that and really respect that and appreciate that the way that they should. And hopefully they will do that more this season and moving forward. But yeah, I mean, listen, they want you to return the ball. They don't want these kicking through the end zones. At the same time, because of where everyone's going to be started and stationed, and the fact that only the kicker can move and the two returners can move, but nobody else can move until the ball hits the ground or hits a player, and or that a player catches the ball. So once it makes contact with somebody and then either goes to the ground or is in the hands of someone, you could start to move. Essentially, it keeps all the chess pieces on the table set,
Hmm.
and once that catch happens, then you can move around and go to tackle. I think it provides more strategy. It provides the opportunity to create more, blocking techniques and ways to get around it. And it prevents people from running downfield full speed, which is the whole point of what I think they're really doing here, which is prevent somebody running at you full force and knocking you down to prevent those big time injuries and those blows. So if everybody has to be stationary and then take off once you've already taken off, then it creates more, hopefully, kickoff returns and people that want to return the ball. And at the same time, it's going to make it a more difficult, obviously, uh, to defend on a kickoff return. But at the same time, it will also create, like I said, the opportunity for more strategy. And if you're a safety or a cornerback or wide receiver or running back and you're fourth, fifth string on the team, fresh off the practice squad, kickoff returns, punt returns, that's where you get your job, whether you're blocking or you're receiving or whatever you're doing in that case, or getting down the field to try and defend. I mean, this is the rest of the roster that's making the team. So I think anything to do to facilitate the special teams returns being better and having more of them more frequent, and at the same time not having guys run full speed down the field. I understand why they're doing it. I think it looks weird when you think about the mechanics of where everybody's like set up, but at the same time, it gives everyone an even playing field and a little bit of a leg up to the kick returner. So I'm okay with it. And anything that prevents injuries, I'm cool with, as long as it doesn't take away the feel of football and the essence of football.
Yeah, I joked with the Built-in Buffalo fam in our group chat that Devin Hester is going to be looking for to unretire and try to get back in this thing. He would have loved that. Yeah, there's going to be exciting plays. I think there's going to be guys, you know, akin to a guy like Devin Hester, where they can come in and specialize in something like that and keep a career alive. You know, Ray McLeod's done that for his career, even with the current kickoff rules being the way they are. So I think it's really exciting. I think it's just going to add more excitement and fun to the game. You mentioned, and we're going to get to this topic next, but you mentioned, making things more difficult to defend, which seems to be the way of the NFL right now, and making it about scoring. And I think that the average doing this along with the next thing we'll talk about with the hip drop tackle is you know trying to get that average score per game creeped up a little bit. I think they could be going and maybe going a little bit too far, and we'll see how it works out. But I think that's their goal is to obviously increase points per game, and it sounded like they were a little bit further down than they would like to be this past season. So they're trying to get those numbers up, and they're doing a good job so far this offseason and making sure that it is harder to defend in the NFL. But I love the kickoff return rule. I like the way they're at least listening and being open-minded about what other leagues are doing. It's cool that it kind of came from the XFL and
Yeah.
that idea and things like that. So being an open showing to have an open mind and not being just regimented. I think you have sports, national sports here that do kind of stick to their guns and stay in their ways maybe too long before they make a change, and the NFL is kind of more adaptive and showing that they're willing to try. And this is only a 1 year trial basis, I believe, for this kickoff rule as well. So there's not to say it's here to stay, but they're going to try it and see how it affects the game moving forward this season.
Yeah, I think a lot of sports are looking to try and score more, and we saw it, years ago with college basketball and the different rules and changes and things that they set in place. I don't mind a defensive game. I think what's unfortunately happening in the NFL, and I understand, and I want to preface this, that I'm all about safety and I'm all about these players and professional players and student athletes and high school athletes and pee-wee athletes and all. I'm all for people being healthy above everything. I want people to be able to, have a life after football. So let me preface by saying that. And I have a lot of friends in this world. So, the last thing I want is for them to have some type of ailment during or after they play. So I want that to be clear. With that being clear, you can't tackle anymore. You can't. I mean, I think we're honestly getting to a point where quarterbacks are going to wear flags, and we're just going to be pulling flags off of quarterbacks. If you get both of them off, it's a sack, whatever it may be. But I feel like we're getting to this place where you cannot sack a quarterback. Everybody's a defenseless player. It's getting to a point where, and they want to look at targeting for this, that, and the third. Targeting sometimes is very, very clear.
Hmm.
And then we look at it in the past, there were so many times where guys were knocking people out and we would buy videos of it, bloopers and hard hits. And we watched
Yep.
these videos and we thought that they were incredible. And then they're like, oh yeah, no, this could cause CTE and this could cause this and that. But now, I mean, it's happened so many times. Barry Church covered him in Jacksonville, safety for the Jaguars, playing in the AFC Championship game back in 2018 against the New England Patriots. I'm there in Foxborough, and he puts a hit on Rob Gronkowski. And Rob Gronkowski, as Barry was coming in, Rob looks at him, lowers his head. And when the player that has the ball lowers their head and you hit their head, that's not your fault
Yeah.
because you've already taken off. They've decided to lower their head while you're midair. You can't do anything once you're midair. And if you even look at it, he hit Rob's shoulder and went up. And they called a penalty, and Rob goes out of the game at the moment, and people think Barry's a dirty player. And I talked to Barry after. I looked at Barry. I go, Barry, what was it? He goes, I didn't do it on purpose. I go, Barry, I know. He's like, you. I said, yeah. I said, dude, I saw it. I know you're not that type of guy. So I think, yes, it's good to have these rules in place. Yes, there's a lot of things in the past that, probably shouldn't have been allowed to happen. But at the same time, I mean, how are you supposed to, at 300 pounds, get through an offensive lineman, run full speed at a quarterback? And here you are at 327 pounds jumping on a quarterback. And as you're taking him down in midair, you have to take your 300 plus pounds and push yourself off of him so that you fall somewhere else that's not on
Yeah.
top of him. Because if you do, then it's a penalty. It's just some of this stuff. I mean, they have to actually read what they're writing and understand that it defies the laws of gravity and science. And if it does that, unless you want to put a magic carpet in between the two of them and have it take somebody off for a ride, and Ed Oliver goes to take down, Justin Herbert, and then all of a sudden is able to take that magic carpet and it'll swiftly move him out of the way. Some of these rules just sound absolutely ridiculous. So the what do they call it? The essence of the law, the feeling of what the law is supposed to be, the theme of it is good, but the actual mechanics of can it be done seem kind of ridiculous, especially in the case of pushing yourself off a quarterback in midair.
Sure. Yeah. The hip drop tackle, that rule, I understand the premise of what they're trying to do with it. It is causing people to get hurt in areas because, people are smaller and faster, on the defensive side of the ball typically. So they have to come up with creative ways. There's certainly a form to tackling that we're all taught early on. And there's just the game's so fast, so hard to get in those positions to try to form tackle completely, 100% properly, by the proper fundamentals. So I hope that with this hip drop tackle, they don't start throwing flags all over the place, and that it's more of a basis for fines after the game type of rule. And I think they set that standard a little bit where they say, okay, we're not going to necessarily call all the penalties, but we're definitely going to be reviewing it and levy some fines after. You see with the targeting thing that you mentioned, you see college players get kicked out of games so often for just making a play. So being a fast play, bang bang, and they make a mistake, quote unquote, and it just becomes they're ejected from the game. And sometimes it's warranted, and other times you just feel for the kid because he's out there trying to you know raise his stock for the next level and play his style of football. And they're taking him out of the game, which affects a lot. It's a big deal. It affects the player and the games a lot of times. Um, yeah, moving on from the kickoff and the hip drop tackle, I guess, is the trade deadline moved back a week. I didn't understand why they didn't just move it back 2 weeks, because the NFL is going to be going. It's eventually probably going to play an 18-game season. So why not just move it 2 weeks back now and then be done with it? They're going to have to revisit this later, in my opinion, if they do add that 18th game to the schedule for teams. So yeah, I think that little bit short-sighted here. They kind of tweaked it just to fit this 17-game schedule, and we'll see how it ends up from there.
Yeah, I mean, what it comes down to is when the trade deadline's going to be, and if they move it, they move it, and whenever it is. I mean, you understand that. You pay your front office to know these things. You pay your front office to be prepared. You pay your front office to be 3 steps ahead. If not, then they're 2 steps behind. So the way that I look at this is, whenever it is, if I was the general manager, tell me what the date is. Tell me, give me that. I'll circle
Hmm.
it, and I'm going to be handling my business until then. I think there's a lot of moves that have been made. Obviously, this has been a very adventurous offseason for the NFL. There's been a ton of quarterbacks, be it a starter or a backup, or what are they going to be now if they were a starter, in the case of Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, both in Pittsburgh. There's a lot of things that have already happened. And I mean, the trade deadline, obviously you got to be smart with it. But again, just like the NFL draft, when they changed when the NFL draft was going to be, when they changed how the days were going to be broken down, all you got to do is tell a general manager what it's going to be, and that's it. I mean, I don't put a lot of thought into it, other than the fact of, give me the date and let me go to work.
Right on. And shout out to my typical co-host Peter DiBiase, who's in the comments here. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Go out and look for Wake Up Call with DT as well, and check out what Dan Tortora is putting out there into the world. Because, like I said in the opening, just the positivity beams every day, and it's just a pleasant, uh, you know, pleasant content that you can go out there and listen to and watch if you'd like. And I certainly appreciate it. So moving on with the rule changes, they're going to start playing games on a Wednesday now, playing Christmas Day this year on a Wednesday. I have no issue with playing games on Christmas Day. I think the NBA does pretty well with their slate on Christmas. Playing on a Wednesday is a bit weird. I think it doesn't really favor some of the players and the teams, just scheduling wise. I guess they mentioned there would be some logistics around that, so it would be akin to playing a Sunday and then a Thursday if that team playing on Christmas plays on a Saturday the week before. Um, but as a player, I think, and as a team in NFL, you do have to kind of roll with the punches. So that is what it is. But I like the idea of Christmas football. Not super excited about Wednesday football, I guess. But overall, what do you think on the Christmas and Wednesday game?
I mean, I am a firm believer in God. I believe that Christmas should be spent with your family. I think these players give us more than enough. And so I feel bad every time there's a game on Christmas. It could be college football, it could be the NFL, it could be the NBA, it could be anything. The first thought on my mind is, I feel bad for those people. I feel bad for their families. I feel bad for the fact that, they're out here working, and they're doing these things so that we can sit and watch them. So I mean, if they're okay with it, fine. I feel bad for them, in the sense of, I feel like they should be able to be home. And sometimes in moments like this, I feel like it's animals that we're asking to dance for us in a circus, when, everybody deserves a break. So, I mean, playing on a Wednesday, I don't care. Playing on Christmas, as long as the players are good with it, playing on Christmas is always like, I don't watch the NBA games because I feel bad. Like, I
Yeah.
just I feel genuinely bad that they're out there playing. I understand they're making money. I understand, it's great. People are watching them. Why are you mad? It's not even being mad. I just feel bad for them. So, I mean, playing on a Wednesday will be unique, but I think when it comes to college football, at the beginning of the season, we've seen Monday. The MAC plays on Tuesday and Wednesday. We've seen the American and other conferences play on Thursday and Friday and Saturday, Sunday. So, I mean, college football has played every day of the week.
Mhm.
So, I mean, do I care if it's a Wednesday? No. But I think on Christmas, you should, shut the TV off and spend a little bit of time with those people you might end up missing someday.
Yeah, although we're presenting ourselves, on a screen and throughout the media, definitely doesn't hurt to take a break and
Yeah.
spend that real time with real people in the flesh. I definitely can understand that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, any other things that have been going on in the NFL as far as changes that you would like to highlight, talk about, or otherwise before we move on to the NFL draft?
I think again, speaking on the fact of all this movement, I've been really I like when there's this I like when there's a plethora of moves that make things really interesting. And I think just looking at quarterbacks in general, that to me has been very much on my mind as to what this future is going to look like. There's been so many transactions. I mean, Mitch Trubisky, finding him in Buffalo, we see the fact that Jimmy Garoppolo, seeing him with the Rams, and now knowing he's going to be suspended for a couple games here, but then Baker Mayfield getting his extension with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when you were kind of looking at where's he going to be. Kirk Cousins got a ton of money. He's been in the league for a while, but 4 years, $180 million. Gardner Minshew, who I covered in Jacksonville, and I think is wonderful to have in your locker room. I think he's a good guy to have on the field with you. He brought the Colts to the brink of the playoffs when Anthony Richardson went out early. Now he's a Raider. Jacoby Brissett is back with the New England Patriots. Tyrod Taylor, former Bill, is now with the Jets to back up Aaron Rodgers in case they need that. Hopefully they don't, but in case they do. Minnesota needs a quarterback, but right now they brought in Sam Darnold. Marcus Mariota's been all over the place. He's in Washington. Famous Jameis, who I covered in college, is now backing up Deshaun Watson, which is interesting here. So you got Clemson and FSU on the same team. Drew Lock, who went from Denver to Seattle, is now with the New York Giants. And then I mentioned Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, and the list goes on and on and on. And Mac Jones is from Jacksonville, and now he is a Jaguar backing up Trevor Lawrence as an insurance policy. Kenny Pickett, they already let go of him in Pittsburgh. He stays in PA and goes to the other side of it in Philadelphia. And I mean, it is. I'm staring at all these moves here. Joe Flacco signed with the Colts after having a tremendous time with the Cleveland Browns. Carson Wentz just signed today with the Kansas City Chiefs. So I think I mean, just looking at quarterbacks alone, it's putting us in a really unique place of who is going to be the starter and who are some of these guys that could take over. And then seeing these high draft picks that have been moved around already, in just a couple seasons. The Wentzes of the world, how quickly he was moved, and then he's moved so many times since then. Kenny Pickett in his rookie contract being moved, seeing Baker Mayfield that could have been moved, but he ends up staying with Tampa. So I think that's been really on my mind, just what all of this is going to look like, and really what Pittsburgh is going to look like, namely because they had a quarterback for so long, and they tried Mason Rudolph, they tried Kenny Pickett, they've had Josh Dobbs more than once, but here they are bringing in Russell Wilson, and you go, okay, well, he didn't look that great in Denver. What's this plan for? And then 5 seconds later, they bring in Justin Fields. But off of that, the Chicago Bears waited way too long. They got a 6th-round pick for Justin Fields, and I think it can be conditionally changed to a 4th or something like that.
Yeah.
But they got a 6th-round pick for him, and that was, to me, you get draft capital. You get 2024 right now. you get a second rounder and a third rounder, or a second and a fourth, or something like that. They missed the boat. They waited. There was a million moves, and then Justin Fields was kind of just left out there. And so whoever Chicago was talking to, they held their cards and tried to make somebody bluff, and the rest of the NFL just kept on moving. And at the end of the day, the Chicago Bears were asking everybody to go fish, and it didn't work out. So you got to pick, but it wasn't great. And Justin Fields is worth a lot more than what Pittsburgh paid for him. So I think the loser in this whole carousel of quarterbacks is Chicago. I know they're going to get somebody, but I think as far as draft capital and value, it they waited too long, essentially.
For sure. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting thing with, like you mentioned, Baker staying put in Tampa. How's his career going to turn out? Very polarizing figure, I think. And then Justin Fields ending up behind, presumably behind Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh. We don't know how that's all going to shake out yet, but then leaving Chicago to rebuild with yet another rookie quarterback and seeing where that goes. And since they drafted Mitch Trubisky, they've had a plethora of rookie quarterbacks and young quarterbacks they've had to try to insert there, and it just hasn't really. I would have personally stayed with Fields and tried to ride him a little bit longer. I think in this day and age in the league, people are too quick to give up on people, and that's
Yeah.
even coaching staff. Sometimes there are blatant times when, okay, this guy's lost his team maybe, and you need to move on. But sometimes I think teams are just too quick to kind of give up on a guy or throw the plan out the window and start anew because it seems more exciting at the time. So I think it'll be interesting to see. There's going to be a heck of a lot of backups that are played a lot of snaps in the NFL this year, it seems. So there's going to be a lot of veteran leadership and stuff, or at least seasoned folks sitting the bench, backing up quarterbacks in this league this year.
Yeah, and I had a plan for Chicago. They didn't follow it, but my plan was to keep Justin Fields at least for another season, run out his rookie contract. So hold on to Justin Fields, go and get Derrick Henry, draft Marvin Harrison Jr. That was my plan, to completely change the offense in Chicago, and then use your number 9 pick to either, help you out on the offensive line in some respect, or just go big on defense. They didn't listen to me.
Yeah.
And, they still have the number 1 pick, and they have 2 picks in the top 10. And I still think they can get Marvin Harrison Jr. I still think there's things that they can do within this, but I just thought keeping Justin Fields, drafting Marvin Harrison, and going to get Derrick Henry, and if not Derrick, then Saquon, I thought that would have been a good look for them. But all they did was nothing that I said, but they could still get Marvin Harrison Jr. So that's, I
There you
mean,
go.
it's still alive, but Chicago kind of head scratcher for me. I mean, obviously they're going to draft a quarterback, but which one should they draft? Maybe I got a different opinion than some other people.
Yeah, I think there's plenty of guys. Look at the Buffalo Basement, a show that airs on Friday on Built in Buffalo. Matt Digert from the Basement has Caleb Williams as his 93rd on his big board, and doesn't necessarily think he's worth the number 1 overall pick. And other people, I think, are of that same opinion. I don't pay attention to the quarterback because the Bills, I'm very Bills centric right now and focused on that. And I think, the Bills have their guy, so I don't really need to watch a lot of quarterback play. I'm focused on some other positions that are more up the Bills alley. And I'd like to kind of take a little bit of a turn towards the draft and talking a little bit about, um, you know, prospects, and then also, I'm going to try to tie in and feel free, however. I know, Dan, you're a Jaguars fan, so however you want to tie it in, if you have some guys you like for Jacksonville, if you have some thoughts on Buffalo's strategy and things like that, I'd love to hear that from you. But it's April and draft season. It's in draft season full effect. We've seen Brandon Beane in the media during the NFL meetings and appearances on shows like Pat McAfee, so he's alluded to his aggressiveness in the draft and ability to move around in the draft. I think so far his MO is typically moving up in the draft, but this year I think he may not have that luxury. I'm not sure. The biggest need, and I think everyone's talking about this year for the Bills, is wide receiver. And I think the Bills have to get a wide receiver with a floor of a number two wide receiver. And if they can get someone that extends to a legitimate number one wide receiver in the NFL, it's going to propel the franchise to continue to compete for championships for years to come. What do you think about uh, draft season? I guess do you have some opinions on the Bills specifically, or other draft related opinions, just from a high level view?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, obviously, I think that Marvin Harrison Jr., as I mentioned, is going to be an early selection. I think that there's a lot of focus on quarterback. I do agree that the Buffalo Bills should go out and get a wide receiver. I think that they need some help defensively too. I know that the wide
Yeah.
receiver is the splash thing. That's the thing that, fans want to see that side of it. But I think with the injuries that have had, I mean, it's not going to hurt you to get another defensive lineman. But I think with all the injuries that have happened and the things that they've dealt with at linebacker and just the plethora of guys that are questionable for the start of training camp, just looking at linebacker and then looking at DB. I think if you're the Buffalo Bills and you're selecting where you're selecting in this draft and your first pick is not going to come until 28, I think if you're Buffalo, you look for best available in the first round. And you don't have to go wide receiver. I think you could go corner. I think you could go safety. I think if I'm Buffalo, I'm really looking at who are the defensive backs left on the board toward the tail end of the first round. There's a guy that you could steal. And I don't think Buffalo has to go first round wide receiver. I kind of don't want them to do that. I had a plan for Buffalo. I had a Mike Evans plan for Buffalo. I had a Michael Pittman Jr. plan for Buffalo. I had a potential Calvin Ridley plan for Buffalo. None of those things came to fruition. So, I mean, I think Khalil Shakir, what he's been able to do for this Bills team as a non-household name going into the season has been great. Stephon Diggs, to really be that team player. I think but you need to have a number two. Gabe Davis is now in Jacksonville. Selfishly, that's cool for me because I covered him at UCF. But
Hmm.
seeing Buffalo and looking at the first round and where they're picking, I'm not looking wide receiver. I'm looking defensive back or linebacker, but I'm probably in my gut leaning more toward a defensive back right now and seeing who's best available because I think the runs that Buffalo that they were expected to make in the last 3 years didn't happen at times. And I'm not going to take anything away from the teams they went up against, but injuries to the defense is what we kept talking about with Buffalo for the last 3 years. And so I would I would say that stopping a team down the stretch has been an issue, and having to rely on Josh Allen's theatrics at the end of the game is something that I don't want Buffalo to have to do, to always have to shoulder it to Josh Allen. So I'm looking defensive back at the end of the first round or linebacker, really best available, but I'm probably looking more toward defensive back. But they definitely have to build up their linebacker core. And I love Matt Milano. I covered him in college too, but at the end of the day, you got to have healthy guys. And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. So Buffalo needs depth and they need talent. And I think they can get some good stuff despite the fact that they're picking a little bit later.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want them to pick defensive back or linebacker in the first round, but I can understand your point. I think that the depth of the defensive backs, especially at safety, where maybe, in my opinion, their bigger need might be, that falls right in line. If they would have had a third round pick with this compensatory formula, that would have been very, very beneficial. But not having that pick has definitely turned out to be tough. I
Yeah.
would not be completely mad if they get the right value at my biggest thing is get the right value at each one of your picks. This draft is too important to the future of the franchise to miss on, especially a first round pick. the value has to be there. The player has to be, no question about it, going to make an impact in this league. Whatever position they play, they have to be that type of player. I don't see a safety around. I think, there could be some corners that you could argue would be that type of player. Like you said, it's not really the sexy pick. Obviously, Jackson Powers Johnson is someone who's on my mind when I look at value at 28. Although the Bills, presumably, according to Sal Capaccio, are 100% moving Connor McGovern to center. So they're, they also signed Will Clapp. So the center position right now for this season appears to be locked up. But like you mentioned, thinking for the future is going to be very important in this draft. And the run on wide receivers that may happen in the first round may deter that from being the value pick there. So it may need to be best player available. Some folks out here in the comments saying Troy Franklin at 28. I don't know if his value is there at 28. A guy like that, maybe I would try to trade back and get 2 second-round picks and a third round, not so the Bills have 60 already. If they get an additional second-round pick, obviously, and then a third-round pick in addition to that, so then you have 2 picks in the second round and 1 pick in round 3, and one of those could be Troy Franklin. Definitely would love that. You have Jerry Rice, his son, coming into this draft. I don't think he'll be there in the 5th quite, but I mean, if you can grab him in it, trade into the 3rd, maybe he's probably got a late second round grade on him. So, I'm not sure where, but again, wherever they pick these guys, the value needs to be there.
Yeah.
I think there's a plethora of guys that have the ability to do well in this league, but whomever the Bills pick specifically has got to be able to come in immediately being a complement, at least, to Stephon Diggs, but they have got to have the ability to potentially take over as that number 1 receiver in the next 3 years, because that's the trajectory that this team appears to be on. I'm not riding the train to say you have to take a receiver in round 1 either. I don't think that's necessary. I think what's necessary is to hit on the receiver or receivers that you do pick. Whomever that is, that guy has to be able to come in and play meaningful snaps for the Buffalo Bills in 2024-25 season and beyond. It cannot be sit him and, you cannot just wait till the 5th round to take a guy and, put him on the Justin Shorter plan or whatnot, and they found a great value last year in Khalil Shakir. I think Khalil Shakir is very, very good for this team, and adding Curtis Samuel, it takes away the need to really rush in and just grab whoever you can get at 28. I think that is not where the Bills are right now at all. And there's definitely more value potentially at receiver towards 60 or in the second round if they want to move around in round 2 to get the right guy. If their top option, say a Brian Thomas Jr., doesn't fall to them at 28, or they don't trade up to get him in the first round, then where is the value for what position you're picking? I think another position that absolutely could be in play is defensive line. Getting a top flight edge, someone like a Chop Robinson in this draft. I know a lot of Bills fans are turned off by a Penn State defensive end, a la Aaron Maben, but I just think that there is going to be that opportunity there where you mentioned defensive backs. I'm going to say there's definitely defenders to be there, and I would go more an edge, or if one of the top defensive tackles are there. We don't have a lot of guys signed for long term on the interior of the defensive line either. Their defensive line is put together, and there's not a necessary hole this year per se, but there, if you look long term and the length of the contracts that these guys have on the interior of the defensive line, that's something they need to get a rush of young talent in there and guys that can be difference makers on the inside, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about defensive line, and you mentioned the edge, and a guy that I would love to see the Buffalo Bills take is a guy who started his career at Albany, and that being Jared Verse. I mean, Albany, with what he was able to do and kind of put himself on the map, and then he comes to FSU. He has 9 sacks in 2022, 9 sacks in 2023. Just an incredible job. And that guy, he's one that I have circled. Is there going to be this run of 5 or 6 wide receivers, and we're going to see 4 quarterbacks go? So by the time we get down to the Buffalo Bills, is a guy like Jared Verse going to slip a little bit? Do they have to trade up a few spots to get him? And in that
Mhm.
case, I think if we're looking at Buffalo at 28, and let's say we're at the 21st pick, and the Miami Dolphins don't take a Jared Verse, I think I get on the phone with Philadelphia at 22 and I say, listen, we're a few picks away. This guy is going to be, potentially awesome for us. He's been counted out all of his life. We have the opportunity to take him, plug him in, and let him go. And I mean, Buffalo's already got a guy that I covered in college, and so along with Jared Verse, Ed Oliver, and what Ed did at Houston. So I
Mhm.
think for me, if I'm Buffalo and it starts to tick, tick, tick away, and wide receivers and quarterbacks are running the day, and then some DBs are plugged in there and offensive linemen, if we're getting to that 21, 22 pick, I'm going to at least make a phone call and ask a Philadelphia, maybe a Miami, what do you guys want? What are your thoughts? Maybe I don't call Miami because it's the same division. They're going to try and ask me for too much. But, maybe
Mhm.
I call Philadelphia and say, hey, what are you guys going to do with this pick? Because I just, a guy like Jared Verse could fall. And if he falls close enough to Buffalo, I think that they should make a phone call to look at taking him. I think it might be a potential regret if they don't.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you're wanting to maybe get ahead of at least Tampa Bay, right? And maybe Green Bay there. So you definitely have the option to to move up there. For me, I really see more of a possibility this year than ever that you maybe trade back in this draft and you maybe have that conversation with someone else who's trying to come up and get their guy, and you maybe are able to then get yourself back into day two and have, let's say, if you have three or maybe even four, if they can really work a guy, work a team, to have, three or four day two picks, I think that could be just as beneficial. Again, it's going to matter about who they select, who are you picking, is there value there, and really getting that boundary wide receiver, which it doesn't need to be the first round guy because they're not going to get the top of the line guys. They're just not able to do that. They don't really have the capital necessarily to make that move. And whomever they target as their guy, I'm not going to pretend to know that. I have a lot of different players here circled, to go through a few. I think Ricky Pearsall had an impressive combine. He certainly jumps out, on the RAS score and things like that. So that's a guy that can be had in the second or third round. A guy that has the ability at 6'1", 190 to potentially get to a point where he can be a number one wide receiver in this league. Brian Thomas Jr. is the obvious one everyone's talking about. Um, People are talking about Xavier Legette, and I think that Xavier Legette is going to be a fine wide receiver in the NFL, but I don't think he's worth a pick at 28. I just don't think that the value is there, even though I see his potential of being able to be a number one, let's say, in this league. I just don't know, if the value in this draft is there taking him. Um, Wanted to get your thoughts on one guy, and I know we didn't talk about necessarily player specifics or anything, but on Jermaine Burton out of Alabama. What are your thoughts on him, and how do you see his draft going and him fitting into the league?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and you brought up one of the guys that I was actually looking at here is Xavier Legette, and
Mhm.
and I don't, I mean, honestly, I don't see Buffalo taking a receiver at 28 if they stay at 28. But
Right.
looking at Jermaine Burton, I spent a couple seasons in Georgia and then went off to Alabama, and so going going inside of the SEC, which used to not be allowed, or you had to sit out a certain amount of time, maybe a little bit longer instead of 1 year, sometimes two, like it was in the ACC. But I mean, in the last couple seasons, 677 yards and 798 yards. He was averaging 17 yards per catch, and then it went up to 20.5 this past season. 8 touchdowns. Most touchdowns he's ever had in a season was this past season. The second most was last season with 7. So when he went to Alabama, his numbers went up. He was under 500 yards in his first season at Georgia and his second season at Georgia. And then he just consistently shot up here outside of the fact that his 19.1 yards per catch in 2021 was better than 2022, but not as good as 2023. So, I mean, I think a guy like Jermaine Burton, he's 6 foot, so you're looking at the same height as Shakir. And I mean, if I'm the Buffalo Bills, I want a 6'3", 6'4" guy.
Yeah.
That's what I want. So, I mean, Jermaine Burton's numbers aren't terrible, but I mean, when I look at this, I mean, are you going to get Neighbors? No. Are you going to get Marvin Harrison Jr.? No. Are you going to get some guys out of Washington? Potentially not. Brian Thomas, I don't think so. So then you say, do you hope that Mitchell out of Texas falls to you at 6'4", 196? I would have liked Xavier Worthy because of, his record setting 4.2, 140 and the fact that I have his rookie card that I've held on to for a long time. So I need that man to get in the first round. But I mean, the reality for me, I don't think Buffalo's going wide receiver in the first round. If they do, then I mean, whatever round they do, I'm looking at 6'3", 6'4" guys, and you got to hope that Mitchell out of Texas falls to you. Keon Coleman out of Florida State. I don't know if I necessarily want to go there. You mentioned Troy
Nope.
Franklin.
I'll tell you right now, not to interrupt you, but Keon Coleman is completely off my board for the Bills. I do not want that man to be drafted by the Buffalo Bills. I'm sure he could be a fine football player, but obviously we faced him being Syracuse fans and whatnot, or being in the Syracuse area. We've seen him play in the Cuse, and for me, I'm completely off of the Keon Coleman train. I don't even have him as a possibility on my board.
Yeah, and I don't either. So I mean, that's that we definitely agree on that. I think I think if you're in a situation where you can go and get somebody after 28, I think their next pick after that is 60.
Mhm.
So if you can maybe make a move or do something in that respect in round number 2, I'm not opposed to Xavier Worthy, but like I said, Troy Franklin, you got to hope that maybe Mitchell falls or something of that respect. But I don't think that you're going to see these guys that everybody's talking about fall down the board. I just don't see it happening. I think we're going to see wide receivers going, and I think we're going to see quarterbacks going, and I think we're going to see a team or two maybe take one over the other that kind of head scratches a little bit. I don't trust Washington. They need a quarterback, but something tells me that they might sit there and go, do we take Marvin Harrison? Like, I feel like they're going to maybe go back and forth with some of this stuff. But
Right.
yeah, for Buffalo, you need height, you need speed, but you need height in Buffalo. And I don't necessarily like some of these picks for them that might be available at 28. So they might have to dig a little bit deeper and look at some other pieces here. Curtis Samuel, I mean, bringing him in, he was supposed to be one of those guys to potentially change a team, and it's never shaken out. He's been a little bit of a journeyman, but maybe he can catch on in Buffalo. All I know is that you have 2 tight ends in Buffalo that I would like either one of them to be my starter. Kincaid obviously has a lot of flair to him, but Dawson Knox has done some good things. So I think there's help in the receiving core, but you definitely, if I'm Buffalo, I'm going height. And if I'm Buffalo, I'm not giving up the world to try and trade up to get one of the top 4 guys.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's just don't have the flexibility in your organization right now to be able to do that. Obviously, Roma Denze is like the perfect mold wide receiver for the Bills. Watching him throughout his time at Washington, you'd see like, man, he would fit so well in Buffalo, and just he's obviously just way too high. I don't think it's attainable. So it's one of those things where, I think a lot of people, including myself, are kind of locked into the Will Brian Thomas Jr., A.D. Mitchell, get there, and then is Troy Franklin worth it at 28? Um, the next guy that I'm looking at is Jalen Polk or Xavier Leggett. Those guys are
Yeah.
more if they fall to 60, or if you trade up in the second round and get them in, the top, around 50 or something like that. Are they there? But you don't want to spend a lot of assets like you mentioned. I like that. A Devontae Walker has some height and speed here out of North Carolina. So there definitely are guys. And somebody mentioned Brendan Rice earlier, 6'3". He is one of the guys that I've been targeting. I've been watching. Maybe uh, his has some questions, but I think a lot of they do this thing here locally and at on the radio station WGR, where there's prospects that you try to guess the prospect based upon their negative reviews coming out of college. And some of the things people said about a Randy Moss or something like that, it was just laughable. So I think that some of these guys are going to be just fine, and it doesn't necessarily need to be a first round guy. So I think that um, the Bills' draft strategy has to be able to stick to their guns and get the value there, and when they need to set themselves up now for long term. They can't be short sighted and try to get the shiny new toy, let's say, right away early in the draft. In my opinion,
Yeah, I
um,
mean, you got to get the guy that you're okay negotiating with first round money down the stretch. I mean, the guy that
mm,
you think is going to be worth it and that you actually want to sit in a room and negotiate with if they do perform. And is 28 the time to get the sixth wide receiver, or is it time for you to, like I said, look at a Jared Verse that might fall into your lap, looking at somebody on the offensive line that might stick out there, or a defensive back? And again, I know the fans might want, like you said, that shiny wide receiver, but if you want that shiny wide receiver, you got to be in the top 15. They're not in the top 15. So
right.
unless they want to give something up that you don't want to give up, it's not worth it.
Yeah, and there's great possibility that a guy like Chop Robinson, Jared Verse, or Leatu Latu can be there for you. And like you mentioned, even if you have to go up a few spots to get one of those guys, it might be worth it. Again, value, value, value. This whole draft, we have 11 picks for the Bills, and each one needs to be selected with value in mind and being able to put people in positions to set this organization up for the future, because their assets are tight right now. They've painted themselves into a point where they just don't have a lot of flexibility, and they need to hit on these draft picks to really continue their sustained success. And saw someone earlier in the comments talking about the Bills winning another division championship this year, and that maybe somebody else might take it. And until someone else takes it, I don't, they thought they took it this year and they didn't. So we'll see how that goes, I guess, uh, moving forward. Um, yeah, then I just wanted to, being a local New York college coverage kind of guy, I did see, wanted to give you the chance to, maybe you might be more well versed in highlighting a few prospects here, whether it's one or five that you think you like, at least, even if they're going to be undrafted free agent pickups and things like that. Who do you like from a New York college prospect standpoint? Do you have any guys you're kind of that you've worked with? I know there's a certain gentleman that you're close to out of Syracuse University that plays defensive line.
Yeah.
In Ochuku, is that how you say his name?
Caleb Okachukwu. Yeah.
Okachuku. Yeah, so I figured he might be brought up in conversation, but yeah, just anybody else, or talk about him a little bit too.
Yeah. I could say that, and Caleb is, the first one that I want to bring up. He is a consummate professional. He's such a strong player. He works extremely hard. He chose to come back to Syracuse to be one of the leaders this past season. The guy is a lot of things, in my opinion. And I think Caleb Okachukwu, I mean, you look at Kingsley Jonathan, on the defensive line of the Buffalo Bills, and they liked him. And then he spent a little bit of time in Chicago, and he came back and spent all of last season with the Buffalo Bills. And why? It's because of his work ethic. It's because of his faith in himself. He's got a strong faith in God. He's got a strong faith in himself. He works hard. He's a good guy. He's a family person. And I think people forget that you have to be more than talented. People like to work with people that they like to be around, and the people that they don't have to worry about. And
Mm.
and Caleb Okechukwu, he's just one of those guys that's going to be a junkyard dog. He's going to go to work. He's going to battle. He's going to fight. He is going to appreciate the opportunity, appreciate the blessing. So Caleb's a guy that I would love to see in my training camp. I don't care which one of the 32 NFL teams want to do it. If he wants to come down to Jacksonville, have at it. They need help. And, if he wants to go over to Buffalo, Buffalo already knows that there's talent that comes out of Syracuse. So, I mean, yeah, Caleb's on my mind for sure. JJ Leap, as well as Cole Burgess coming out of SUNY Cortland, Division III after winning a national championship. I really want, or JJ Lapp, pardon me. I really hope that people look at JJ and look at Cole. I'd love to see that. There's people thinking that Cole might get a shot, maybe not JJ, but these SUNY Cortland guys, they got to work out at Syracuse Pro Day. There was, some other people from other schools that came over to Syracuse to work out because Syracuse arguably had their least amount of draft prospects
Mhm.
available. Caleb didn't work out that day. Quarterback Garrett Schrader didn't work out that day. So I'd love to see Cole get a chance. I'd love to see JJ get a chance. I think Caleb will get a chance somewhere. I think he'll at least be asked to come to a rookie minicamp.
Yeah.
And as far as Garrett Schrader goes, I can't say enough about him. Again, another man of a very strong faith. He had 3 injuries and he wouldn't get off the field.
Yeah.
He did everything in his power to get Syracuse to a bowl game. And then he had surgery, and then he went and took care of things for himself. He put his body on the line. I think if you go back and you look at Garrett Schrader and you look at all the negativity, and he kept going out, and people saying he couldn't throw, which I never said, and just his running ability, things that he could do, opportunities that he created. Without him, it's like talking about Eric Dungy. Without Garrett Schrader, this team maybe wins 2 games a year, maybe 3 games a year, probably 2 games a year. And I feel like Garrett Schrader is a guy, and he said, some people are looking at me for different things, different ways of using the quarterback, because you can have the emergency third quarterback on game day. That makes a guy like him enticing. So I think he'll get in a camp somewhere. I think he'll get a look somewhere. And I think a team's going to be really happy at his work ethic and the type of human being he is. So, I mean, I'm going to shout out my SUNY Cortland guys. I'm going to shout out Caleb and Shrades. And I hope everybody gets an opportunity somewhere, especially these guys that are just gentlemen and students of the game and hardworking and spending a lot of time with Caleb and a lot of time with Garrett. I have a tremendous amount of respect for them, and then being around the coach and obviously getting to talk with SUNY Cortland and talk with Cole and JJ. I'd really like to see them, also guys who have been counted out all their lives. I'd like to see them have a chance. I mean, there was a Division III receiver that ended up being pretty good. His name is Jerry Rice. So you never know. And
Yep.
if the NFL is good at anything, I would say the NFL is one of the best, if not the best, probably next to Major League Baseball, of just fine tooth combing and finding talent at any college, any division, anywhere. JUCO doesn't matter. They really know how to find some awesome dogs. And I think Florida State found one in Albany, and that's why I brought up Jared Verse for Buffalo, because I think he's going to be a steal, especially in the later part of the first round potentially. But yeah, I mean, I got some guys that I personally know their journey, and Schrader and Caleb the most of anybody that's going into this draft, and I'm hopeful, but I think both of them will end up in a camp.
Yeah, this segment was a little bit more exciting last year when we were talking about, first and second round guys coming out of Syracuse for sure. But definitely agree. Caleb will absolutely get an opportunity just because of the man he is, and hearing it from you, and just being able to watch him on the field as well as closely as I do. Definitely can attest to that. So, and that kind of brings up my last point here, and then we're gonna kind of get out of here. I think current events, off the field issues have been kind of some of the story here. The Bills obviously had a little bit of a thing with Von Miller last year, and the commissioner came out and said that he was considering putting him on the exempt list, but now, didn't feel that it was necessary, giving all the happenings. And now, obviously, currently, Rashee Rice is in the news with a street racing incident potentially and things like that. You hear his lawyer coming out today saying that that he'll handle it responsibly and things. And just goes to show you, these people are human, but having the folks that are going to do the right things when nobody's looking and that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. I think that that's really the goal here is you have to take that into account and find the good people throughout here that are going to do the right thing by the opportunity that you give them. And I didn't if you want to have a chance to speak on that at all, I just wanted to get your thoughts really.
Yeah. I mean, I think uh, some of this stuff, I mean, it hits home in the coverage of the Jaguars. Wide receiver Zay Jones covered him at East Carolina when he left college as the receiver that had the most career receiving yards ever at the time, only and then broken by Justin Hardy, who was also at East Carolina at the time. Zay, I loved covering Zay in college. I wanted him to catch on in the NFL. I know he didn't catch on in Buffalo. And I think he's done some really good things in Jacksonville. He is another strong man of faith. Him and I have very, very like one of one conversations. It's very unique. I love talking with Zay. He had some stuff last season. His charges were dropped. So, you know, and that was one of those moments where I was kind of sitting there going like, I know I don't see Zay every day, but like we talk about deeper things and we have like a deeper connection than just like, oh, I'm just here to talk to you for 2 minutes at your locker. So I think in anything in life, I go to my favorite superhero. And with great power comes great responsibility,
Mhm.
Spider-Man. And I think that there is the reality that some of these hits and things that happen to these NFL players can cause them to become a different version of themselves. I think there's things that go along with this. I think that hits and CTE and stuff obviously can maybe change the person that you are or affect the person that you are. I think the other part of it is when you make a lot of money, and you get your hands on drugs and you get your hands on alcohol and get your hands on women all over the world. And I think that what people don't seem to understand because they're not living it is when you are handed a pile of money that looks like DuckTales and you have all of these other things at your disposal, you can get drugs, you can get any type of drug you want, you can go anywhere you want. Sometimes there's the enticement of people getting it just because they can. And I'm not saying that any of it's right because it's not. It's not right to go out there and just go after all of these things that can really affect you. And in the case of Rice, I bring all this stuff up because there's this invincibility. I'm at the top of the world. I'm a Super Bowl champion. I'm making a ton of money. I can have whatever I want. I can buy anything. There's nothing big enough for me, and there's nothing big enough to hold me. And I'm not saying that that's what Rice thinks. I'm saying in moments like this, I think that there are athletes and entertainers in general that think they're larger than life. And sometimes things happen because they need the thrill. And what you see a lot happening is in the offseason. If you go back and look at Adam Pac-Man Jones, I did this years ago. If you go back and you look at his track record of at the time there was 14 different things that he had allegedly done.
Mhm.
There was 14. 12 of 14 happened in the offseason. The other two happened right around Halloween. So when you look at Pac-Man, it was like, okay, well, what's Halloween? It's the mischievous holiday. He had a couple counts at that point. The other 12 times that he had gotten in trouble at this time years ago, when there's 14 different things going on, they were in the off season. He needed it seemed like he needed somewhere to put his energy. He needed the thrill, he needed the chase, he needed the exhilaration, he needed the adrenaline. And maybe that's what Rice needed. Maybe in this case he needed adrenaline. I'm not here to speak for him. I'm making a thought based
Hmm.
off of some other things that I've seen. But I think what we see in the NFL sometimes is they think they're untouchable. They think they can get out of anything. And when they're away from contact, they need something to drive up their blood again. And I think if you look through history and you look at car crashes, you look at drugs, you look at alcohol, it didn't happen one time in the NFL. It didn't happen once. I mean, how many times have we said when a guy gets a DUI or a DWI in professional sports, they have all the money in the world, get an Uber. They had all the money in the world, get a taxi, get a limo
Yeah.
driver. Why did you drive that night? So, I mean, what can I say about the off the field issues? I think sometimes, and this is just my opinion, there is no, somebody told me this. This is just my opinion. I think adrenaline, I think being untouchable in their mind, I think having a lot of money and having a lot of time not doing the thing that they love because they're only playing for a certain amount of, there's 52 weeks in the year.
Yep.
These guys aren't even playing half of the year in a game. So what are they doing with more than half a year? And I think in certain cases, you're finding guys seeking to get that blood boiling, body going, heart pumping, adrenaline boosting thing. And sometimes it leads to stupid behavior.
It's the same, and they have all the money, so why can't they rent a track or do a lot of different takes that can go down that road.
Oh
But
yeah.
yeah, just love to hear your thoughts on that. So thank you, sir. We're at an hour now. I want to respect your time and respectively, we can wrap up here. So tell us again where everyone can find you, your social media handles, or whatever information you want to give out about yourself and where you can be found. And again, thank you very much for the time and the conversation today. It was very nice.
No, I appreciate it, Lance. It means a lot to me that you've thought of me more than once, and that truly does not go unnoticed or underappreciated by any stretch of the imagination. I think you're an awesome guy out here chasing your dreams, and to all the men and women and boys and girls doing the same thing, I would tell them keep going. I would tell you God's got your back. When you think you can't do it, there's something around the corner. You just got to keep fighting. And I love every second of it. I don't feel like I've worked for over 20 years. So you can find us Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. The show is Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. It is aired worldwide on youtube.com and facebook.com, both / Wake Up Call DT. It's also on wakeupcalldt.podbean.com for internet streaming radio. That's where you can find over 1,600 episodes on wakeupcalldt.podbean.com. If you want to listen to us at your leisure, we're on Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts, Player FM, Podbean, as I mentioned. We're also on Spotify, TuneIn. All you have to do is search Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, or one word, Wake Up Call DT. The website is wakeupcalldt.com. And then Facebook's at Wake Up Call DT, Instagram's at Wake Up Call _DT, and X is at Call DT. So plenty of ways to find us. We try to be hard to miss, and we cover the gamut. So, come on the show, listen, laugh, try to make you laugh every single day. And we have a lot of fun. And we always talk about deeper things and go beyond sports. So we have a lot of great guests, a lot of awesome people that join me weekly or monthly. And we've built a good family over the years. So yeah, wakeupcalldt.com has all of the things I said, all of the links to our podcasting platforms, to our social media, to our YouTube channel, all of our articles, and all of the wonderful business partners that we work with, as well as Lemoyne, Binghamton, and Bryan and Stratton College of Syracuse that we work with to see those exclusive multimedia marketing partnerships. But yeah, I mean, that's it in a nutshell. If you search Wake Up Call and you search Dan Tortora or one or the other, you'll find me. And I ask you to follow, subscribe, hang out, and share with me your story. Tell me what you care about. And, maybe we'll be talking about it on the next broadcast. But I always appreciate everybody that takes the time to spend a few minutes with me. It means the world to me. It has for 20 years, and it will continue to for the next 20 and hopefully the rest of my life.
Right on. Well said. And if you're looking for more Bills exclusive content, obviously out there, follow Built in Buffalo. Head to our YouTube page if you're not there right now and click subscribe and like the videos. Go to Facebook, click like and share. If you're on X, please repost and throw some comments in there. I love interacting with everyone. So, just as Dan said, please feel free always to comment and give your thoughts on everything that we post here in Built in Buffalo. Up tomorrow is Going Deep Buffalo. Thursday is the Hoof. Friday, Buffalo Basement. Saturday is the Founders Pod. And then Sunday would be Izzy with the Red Zone Report. I also have T in there on Thursday afternoons with her show with Mike. So Not Your Average Podcast and 716 on Thursday afternoons. So check out all the Built in Buffalo content. Like, subscribe, share with your friends and family. And we greatly appreciate it. And with that, I will say, go Bills, and thank you, sir, for a great show.
Make sure you follow this guy. He's awesome.